This episode of Earl Grey is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek FM at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org.
Hi, this is Robert O'Reilly. My name is Gowron. Honor to you and your house. You're listening to Trek FM.
T. O'Grey Hospital.
Welcome to another cup of Earl Grey, Trek FM's dedicated podcast to the next generation. I'm your host, Justin Ozer, and join with me today are the exceptional Richard Marquez and the incredible Amy Nelson. Richard, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. I feel love in the air.
Yes, maybe a hint of what we'll be talking about today.
Maybe.
And Amy, you're coming to us on location from somewhere outside of your usual Vegas house. Is that right?
That is correct. And for the first time, we are all in the same time zone. Not same city, but same time zone.
Yep, all in the Mountain Time Zone. That's right, the first time.
Yep.
Nice.
Yay! Welcome to the Mile High Club.
Yes.
Or back to Mile High Club.
A reference to Denver, I hope. Okay.
Yeah. Well, mountain, I meant mountain, but yeah. Oh, man.
Well, great to have you guys here today. And I was at El Paso Comic-Con yesterday, which was amazing. Got to see Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis and Brent Spiner, and it was incredible. If you guys out there ever have a chance to see any of them or any of the Next Generation cast, you've got to do it because they have so much fun on their panels. So
I'm wondering, because I've never seen them at a Comic-Con. I always see them at STLV. So did they have the major lines like they do at STLV, or was it pretty relaxed and...
Yeah, it was interesting because, I was comparing it because I've only been to STLV before, something that's very Star Trek-centric, and then this was a Comic-Con, which it's interesting because basically the three of them, plus maybe like a table or two in the vendor hall, and there were people that were dressed up, a few, was like all the Star Trek presence. It was, a lot of it was other stuff, other sci-fi. But they did have pretty long lines, but the great thing I think about like a more kind of local con like that is that you get to spend time with them. Like I got to spend probably a good 5 minutes talking to Jonathan Frakes. It's not like at STLV last year, there was this huge line of all the TNG stars, and they kind of hustled you past them like you're on a conveyor belt, so you don't get as much time with them. So I enjoyed that quite a bit, but they did have a good line. That the panel that they did was completely packed and even overflowed with some standing room only, so that was nice to see. So yeah, it was great, but definitely a different experience. And definitely if people have a chance to go to something that's more local or regional and not like a big Star Trek convention, they should, because you usually get to spend more time with the people that are there.
Yeah, I actually agree with that because, when we went to, I've met a few of them. I met Marina Sirtis in person, and Nana Visitor, as well as Connor Trenier and Michael Dorn. All of them at a local con, and the longest was with Marina Sirtis. Actually, I saw her 3 times, but because no one was there, and I think.
Oh, you went by the table 3 times?
Yeah, well, yeah, I talked to her like for a good 15, 20 minutes,
wow.
and each time and each day, because the first day, what's her name, Haley Stillwater, or the one that's that plays. She's on. I can't remember. I want to say it's Peg off of out of the Avengers, but I can't remember what her name is. Anyway, big
help you.
celebrity, and then Chris Evans came in the next day, and of course, no one was over there. Everyone was gravitating towards Chris Evans, and then someone else. I can't remember who else it was, but yeah, it was a talking with her was great. And yeah, you definitely have a lot more time to talk to some of them, face to face.
Yeah, I don't think I could have spent 15 minutes because there was still, a fairly substantial line, but it was kind of like you got to talk to them for however long that you want, and then it moves on to the next person. It's not like
Right.
a rush, so that was nice. But there was a long line for them there and a long line for the photo ops because they had separate photo ops with each of them, and then they had a group photo op with all three of them. So that was nice. that
Oh,
they had
cool.
that.
Did you get all three of them?
You know what? I didn't. Well, actually, I got one with. Actually, what I ended up doing, which I hadn't done before, was I got like the selfie at the table, which actually in this case wasn't just like a selfie. They actually had like someone behind the table who was a volunteer take a picture of you, and it cost less. And I felt like it was kind of, I don't know, a better experience doing that than just going through the photo op. Where, again, they kind of hustle you through. So
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
But no, it was a great experience. So that's my second con ever, and my third will be at STLV again this August. So yeah,
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you had a great time.
I did. I had to talk about it because I'm still kind of on a high about it.
Nice.
All right, so before we get into the main topic of our conversation for the episode, we have some feedback from the Babel Conference. In this case, episode 223, where we talked about schisms with Clara Cook. Richard, do you want to read the first comment?
Sure. Patrick Carlins said, another thing about the book Sight Unseen, it has a few Trek FM nods to it, including a character named after our fearless leader, Christopher Jones. I did not know that.
You know what? I read the book. I think I read the book some years ago before I even got involved in Trek FM, so I didn't even realize the reference.
Yeah. Did you, Amy?
No, I did not. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
And they've done other things, like I think in one of the most recent novels, it may have even been a Discovery novel, they had a character named Charlene Schmidt, who is after the former To the
previous
Journey
host of
host.
TJ.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So they'll do that every once in a while because all those authors get interviewed on Literary Trek, so they like to drop stuff. So thanks for reminding us of that, Patrick. And again, it's a great book.
Right. Well, Eddie Hagler also has an interesting take on it. He says that Schisms is the episode I'm in, Lieutenant Edward Hagler. And he says, and I was reading this, I don't know what you guys thought, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we have an extra from TNG on the Babel Conference? What's going on here? And then he continues saying, my headcanon, the Lieutenant Edward Hagler that had polymer in his bloodstream was a failed clone. The thing that came through at the end was the real Lieutenant Edward Hagler. So,
Wow. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Right on.
It must be interesting to have someone with your name. I know, Richard, you mentioned there are Marquezes that have shown up, but not a Richard Marquez that I've seen.
I don't know if they
I don't think they gave him first names.
Yeah, I don't think they did. That's interesting. I'll have to go back and look. But I know there's two sets of Marquezes, but like one like Lieutenant something Marquez, but he was whatever. But that nurse guy is always in sick bay, always shows up. So I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. I think is incredibly unlikely there will ever be a Star Trek character named Justin Ozer. But
You
and
never
actually, well, actually, this came up for me recently because there hasn't been on screen a character named Justin in all of Star Trek. And actually, there was a comic recently, as far as I can tell. And actually, there was a comic recently that included Strahl, who was an engineer on the Glenn in the show Discovery, and they gave him the first name Justin in the comic. And I was like, yes, a Justin. It survives into the 23rd century.
nice.
So, anyway, thanks for that comment, Eddie. I'm sure you make that connection all the time, but we hadn't made that before. Randy Evans says, great job reviewing Schisms. Love the discussion about the idea of subspace, and if Riker's Bedhead doesn't have its own Twitter account, it should. So thank you, Randy. I checked. There is no Riker's Bedhead account, so it's open if you want to start it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Does he have Bedhead in more than just Schisms?
Oh, yeah, the
Yeah.
Frame of Mind.
There you go. I
A
was
frame
just
of
thinking
mind.
that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was,
No,
but that's that bedhead.
Well, and then he's got the different hairstyle when he plays Thomas Riker. I mean, there's definitely a lot of hairstyles for Riker, considering it is just so short. Not
No.
can't really be styled too many different ways. But he's got a lot of looks there.
Huh. Yeah,
that's
there's
true.
not many. Yeah. Oh, well. That's a good thing. So Zach Moore said, really enjoyed the discussion. Schism is one of my favorite episodes from the later seasons, and I think we can all relate to an exhausted Riker laying down for bed. Then getting woken up, what feels like immediately after, even more exhausted, but it's already time to start the next day. We've all had days, or sometimes weeks, like that at one point or another. Yeah, I agree.
Yes, for me it was this past week. I just feel like I have not gotten any sleep, and I lay down, and then my alarm's going off at 4:30 in the morning, and it's been one of those weeks for sure.
Well, I hope there's not an alien abduction going on in the middle of the night.
Yes, I sure hope so as well. I go get my arm x-rayed.
Ooh.
Put a camera in your room too,
Yeah.
just to make sure.
Yeah, just to be sure. Well, thanks again, listeners, for all your comments in the Babel conference. So now we'll move on to the episode. So you might remember that we previously did an episode on Earl Grey 215 about romantic relationships that came out on or near Valentine's Day. And there were some relationships that listeners had mentioned and other things we had thought of afterwards that we thought we should do a follow-up episode. So we have some here that we'll be talking about today, and hope you have fun listening to it. So I think the first thing that we want to do that we left off of the last episode is talk about Geordi. I feel like there should be a sigh right after that. Geordi.
Oh,
Oh, womp womp.
and
But-
a little nod of the head. Oh dear, Geordi.
Yeah, I have to say, I was rewatching these episodes, which we'll go into in a minute, and I just kept being like, no, Geordi, don't do that. No. Oh, he did it. So, well, let's talk about Geordi LaForge. So the first one that we want to talk about is Leia Brahms, who appeared in 2 episodes, one as a hologram in Booby Trap and one as the real Leia Brahms in Galaxy's Child. So let me start with you, Amy. What do you think about Geordi and Leia Brahms? I guess both the holographic and the real one and their interaction.
Well, I think if listeners remember last week with the character moments, I mentioned how comfortable Geordi is in speaking to the computer. Like, the computer is basically a character on TNG, and Geordi interacts with it just very familiar, and he feels very comfortable discussing and talking to the computer as if it's a real person. So to make this jump into, well, he's now in the holodeck and he's talking to the computer. Well, let's just change the computer into Leia Brahms. I think it's a natural transition for Geordi to make, and I can see why he actually does develop feelings, because he already is treating this computer so friendly, I guess you will. So I see that it is natural for him, and that I can see what's happening. But still is very. Oh yeah, that's why we need sigh. Insert Geordi sigh here, and I think it gets a little creepy when he meets her in person, because he's already got this relationship in his head, and just think how weird that would be to have someone who thinks that they already know you, that you're meeting, and you're like, I don't know you. Who are you? And I know everything about you. I mean, I guess maybe actors feel that way when they come across, the fans. I don't know. I hope it's creepy like that.
Yeah, Justin.
I'm not trying to pursue a romantic relationship with any of the
Yeah.
TNG people I'm seeing, and I do not have them in my personal holodeck
That's true.
yet. Yeah, but it is interesting that we had talked before that he's so friendly with the computer, and now he's taken it to the next level. Like, then I was watching it this time, and I was like, he's kissing the computer. He's really just kissing the computer, isn't he? Like, it's weird. I mean, and I know it feels probably creepier in Galaxy's Child, but it feels creepy here too because, so first of all, like, the Enterprise is in this situation where they're in a lot of danger in this asteroid field that has these booby traps they're trying to get out of. And because he says in the holodeck to, show something on the diagram, and then Leia Brahms appears, and she's kind of like the computer at that point where it's like, oh, what do you want? And how can I tell you these things? But for him to make the leap and then say, computer, could you use her personnel record to add some personality here? Oh, that's great. Now I can, but like, it's not necessary to the mission, and it wastes like valuable moments for him to even do that. So that part is creepy and weird. Like, why would you do that? I don't know. What are your thoughts, Richard? And would you add personality to it in that situation?
No.
That is the correct answer.
I will enter it into the record. No, just kidding. No, and I thought, maybe it's something that'll happen in the 24th century, your 24th century, like, version of stalking, I guess, which actually makes me worried that the computer even has that kind of information. You know what I mean? Like on hand or something like that. Or it's just,
well, they're going from the personnel record, but I was thinking, like, are there really things in the personnel record that would tell you like what they like to eat and what they would smile at and stuff? It just seems like the computer is making some leaps.
No,
Maybe.
because when you join Starfleet, I mean, as in the Army or any military forces, like, you're taking a psychological evaluation. So I'm sure.
And they ask you your favorite food?
Yeah, they ask you the same thing. They have you do the psych eval when joining Starfleet. So you have the psychological, and
right, but you would think that a computer on a starship out there shouldn't have access to the psychological evaluation for the purposes of a holodeck simulation,
it's
right?
Starfleet records. So he's asking, get this record.
I'd hope my psych eval would be, somewhat
maybe
confidential.
have a level of clearance.
I don't remember them asking what kind of food I like in the psych valve.
Well, but also, I mean, think about just this week with the whole thing with Facebook and Zuckerberg, like what things are being stored, what things are being calculated. I mean, and now you're on a starship, and like we see on Discovery, I'd like the white egg with the roasted tomato salsa. Like, those things are going to be kept track of, and so whatever you order the most from your thing, that's going to have a record. And it's a digital age, and it makes very much sense that a computer and any database, especially like Facebook, could come up with and say, oh yeah, this is what Amy Nelson likes because these are the things that she clicks like buttons on, and these are the she stops and reads the article. Like, it's keeping track of everything. And yes, Richard, we should be scared.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Also,
Yeah,
and yes, the answer is no to add that personality to it.
No, and I agree. So since we're on that subject, no, it's just, I've actually had multiple conversations since that whole him talking to Congress and everything. Yeah, it's scary in of itself. It's just, but to mess with Facebook, usually, hopefully they're not listening. I if they say, "Do you like this?" and I usually put no, even though I do. Just
you just say no to everything?
Well, just to mess with their target marketing, because I know what it's doing, and it's scary in of itself. So, no, and I agree. Probably in the future, there'll probably be like recordings, and the computer will be able to analyze body language and everything and whatnot, and be able to probably do what was the error rate? It was like
9% error rate or something,
which is
like
pretty,
that.
Pretty good.
Which would be pretty good. Although clearly in the next episode there's some things the computer may have left out.
So it was recording her public life, not her personal life. Yeah.
But actually, before we go further, like, also in this episode, it opens with Geordi on the holodeck with a real person, and on the beach, and he's trying to make this like a romantic date, and he is trying like way too hard. He's got this holographic violinist, and he's just kind of casually like, oh, I'm just gonna move my arm over here and put it, and she's like, I'm having none of that, and just leaves. But I think even in the episode, Guinan says that he's trying too hard, but Geordi keeps trying too hard. Like, what I don't know. It's like that advice just goes like right through his head, because like I think that, for a lot of people, they want to try to be a certain person or be a certain way in order to like attract the right person. But I'm a strong believer, just be yourself. If someone else likes it, then that's the person that might be good for you. And you can't try too hard or try to be someone else. And Geordi's trying to be someone else. He's trying to be, I don't know, like he's trying to look cool all the time, but he's not cool. But he is an interesting person with what he knows and his engineering knowledge. But I mean, he's not going to be like the most popular person on the ship ever. That's what I mean. But he's trying to be someone he's not.
He's reigning rainbow guy. He's gonna be popular.
LeVar Burton is cool, but I mean, but he's playing this character of Geordi, who often has these characteristics where, like he's creepy, he's trying too hard, he can be a jerk to people sometimes. I mean, I like the character in a lot of ways, but there are other ways where I think he's specifically playing it as not likable. It seems like.
Well, just like what we said, just like what Amy has said, what we all said, that he's a very technical person, and like unless it's what it seems like, if there's not an actual technical manual or something like that, or some kind of step-by-step in order to, because forming relationships is, very fluid, and it can go at multiple directions at any given point. But like with this, I mean, he's used to computers and systems and all that kind of stuff, and it's predictable. There you go.
Yeah,
that's the conclusion I was trying to get to.
Yeah, it's not like trying to align a dilithium crystal or something. There's probably only one good way to do it.
Right.
Yeah. But
well, and I think your point to saying, don't be awkward, just be yourself. I mean, you've been married. We're two married guys here, Richard, Justin. How long have you been married?
I've been married for, it'll be, let me see, 13 years this year.
It's been about 6 months. Yeah.
So now I get to be the voice of the single people everywhere.
Okay.
Because I've been single my whole life pretty much. So every single person is told, just be yourself. It's so difficult because you are trying to attract someone. You do want to be with someone. You do want to be in a relationship and stuff like that. So I think it takes an extreme amount of confidence to get to that point and say, you know what, I am just going to be myself, and either you like me or you don't. And if you don't like me, then hey, that's fine. No bones about it. It takes, I think, a lot of patience and time and confidence to get there. And I don't believe that every person actually does reach that point. So it's easy to say, but I think harder to do.
No, it's a good point. And like I can, of course, only speak from my own experience. And that's just always what's worked for me or what's made sense for me. But I mean, it can be different. But also, like, I think even in saying be yourself, sometimes it's kind of like a greater projection or like a more emphatic projection of who you are in some ways. It's like bigger in order to not by, like lying or being someone you're not, but you're having to kind of project that a little bit. So I can see that.
Yeah.
It's a good perspective. But Geordi probably needs to dial it a little bit back more toward himself.
Yes, he does, I think, need to be more authentic, with who he is. And yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So I still want to talk about Leia a little bit. I want to talk about Galaxy's Child, where the real Leia Brahms enters. So, and here's the question that I have. So during the episode, she comes there and she's different than Geordi thinks. Her hair's done differently, and it seems like she's maybe like a little colder, more distant, right? And during this whole process, I was actually surprised the first time I saw the episode that the first thing that Geordi didn't do was like go to the holodeck and delete that program, because I'm always like, it's still there. But anyway, so she sees the program and she's outraged, rightly, that there's this thing going on, and they have kind of this back and forth, and there's this, you know, situation where they're able to work together. But then toward the end, it seems like they're getting along better, and there's the possibility of a relationship after that. I mean, did that surprise you the first time that it kind of came back to that, and it was maybe working a little bit more at the end?
That was definitely surprising because, seeing, you're right. Why didn't he delete it? Especially when he knows, and he's had to deal with Barkley, you know, creating real people. Didn't he give a speech to Barkley about that's sort of not natural? And if he didn't give it, he was there.
He did give it, but he gave that speech to Barkley after Booby Trap. So maybe he learned from, I don't know.
Right.
But it was after Booby Trap, but that was before Galaxy's Child, where the real one comes.
Yeah. So, so he definitely really should have deleted that, especially since it was based on a living real life person, you know.
Or even after Barclay's experience, like, oh, I need to delete that program I have with Leia Brahms because I told Barkley this isn't cool.
Yeah. So, and it's funny, I always find it interesting when Geordi acts a little surprised to find out that, like, she has this life and is married, and, you know, and I'm like, if you knew all these other things, why did you not know that she wasn't married, or that she was married? That is always a weird thing for me.
You'd think he'd look in her file at least after the crisis had passed, just to see.
But isn't that basically like dating as well? You really don't know about a person until you actually meet and talk to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you would really think in like a personnel record that it would show whether they're married or not.
Well, but I mean, like, you know, out of, I would hope there's privacy in the 24th century, especially when it comes to your personnel record. But I mean, especially when you're meeting someone for the very first time, you're not worried about they're married or not until you actually talk to them and, you know, get to know them, sort of thing. Before, unless obviously the normal, you know, oh yeah, there's his wife right there, so never mind, you know, sort of thing. Or
it would have been funny if in Galaxy's Child he sees her on the transporter pad and is like, is there a Mr. Brahms in your life? But no, he wasn't going to ask that.
Probably not. And I probably wouldn't either if I'm meeting someone either. I mean, I don't know if they believe in rings and all that kind of stuff in the future.
That's a good question.
So maybe. I mean, it's not like you have like a bubble that shows up over your head, you know, your status and all that. Yeah.
So I am wondering what about Geordi or the situation that she decides to say, yeah, this guy isn't a creep. Let me be friends with him. Like, what was it? I mean, I don't know if I could make that transition.
Well, and the thing that I'm always concerned about is it sounds like it's rewarding his behavior. Like, yeah, you might have been like a creepy jerk with this, but I'll give you a chance.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just kind of felt like it a bit came out of nowhere, and they just felt like they had to wrap it up that way. But yeah, and as I mentioned before, they actually get together in the books after her husband dies, which is weird. But anyway.
Well, isn't it talked about? I don't want to misspeak, but sometime in the future that Geordi ends up with Leia.
Oh, okay. I think that
is that parallels.
Maybe
or
that's in.
All Good?
Is that a reference in All Good Things? It might be in All Good Things.
Yeah, All
you
Good Things is what I was thinking.
Yeah. So, anyway, I don't know. For me, it just always seems to come out of nowhere. Like, really? You know, he was the guy that added personality to this holographic depiction of you, and you know, was romantic with it. Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting. So we've been talking about Geordi and Leia for a while, but I think it's important because a lot of people think about that when they think about Geordi.
Yeah.
But there's another Geordi relationship we wanted to talk about, and that is Aquiel, which you see in the episode Aquiel. So if listeners might not remember, there is a mystery at this messaging station, I guess it is, where they route subspace messages. And this Lieutenant Aquiel is missing. Eventually, she's found, and there's some coalescent being, and they're worried maybe it's her or maybe it's this Klingon, but it turns out to be the dog at the end, which is not a good ending. But yeah, like with this one is kind of interesting as well, because they think Aquiel has been murdered. So Geordi is going through her personal logs and stays up all night and finds out like everything about her. And then when they find her alive, it's kind of awkward. But they end up getting romantic anyway, even though she's under suspicion for murder. I don't know. What do you think of this one, Richard?
I'm surprised he didn't make a hologram of her in this one.
Oh, you mean after he saw the personal logs, he just went over to the Enterprise and be like,
yeah,
oh,
like
great holodeck
downloaded them
program.
and just created a hologram program and
that would be really creepy because she's supposed to be dead at that point.
Well, at least she wouldn't be living.
There you go. The actress gets some more screen time. There you go.
Yeah.
But like it's so. I mean, I actually like that episode. I just don't like the ending.
Yeah.
You know, because it should have been like her dying and then him. I guess like falling in love with a pen pal or something like that, or who she was and sort of thing. That would have been. I thought, thinking about it now, I think that would have been a better ending. But like, yeah, it's a little creepy. Not gonna lie.
Well, I see, but I mean, I think he is maybe following some orders and looking at the personal logs because they think she's dead and they want to find out about the murder investigation.
Yeah, but he still does. But he doesn't have to fall in love with her or romance or in his head with her. I don't know.
Yeah, true.
That's
Amy,
that's what's so annoying. You're like, dude, and it's the episode to me is fine, but just seeing Geordi go through the same mistake, in my opinion, of falling in love with, again, starting off with this computer relationship. Computer, pull up the personal logs. Oh, this is so interesting. Computer, I mean, so it's still this secondary way of meeting someone face to face. It's like he falls in love with her before meeting her. And I just, it's
at least she was single.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I just feel so bad for him. It's like, yeah, you're doing your job. And so why are you bringing your personal feelings into it? Why are you allowing yourself to, that's not an excuse.
No, I'm not saying it's acceptable, but I'm saying that's why.
Yeah.
He's a cat.
And it's just like, no, Starfleet, you're supposed to have control. You're supposed to control your emotions and you're supposed to control and you're supposed to know when, and I just like, no, you can't be doing this to every computer, person that you meet. Oh,
yeah. Well, and poor Geordi, so he falls in love with her, and they have, a little romantic relationship. And then at the end, Geordi's like, "Oh, I think I can find an opening for you," and she's like, "I'm good. I'm just gonna leave."
yeah.
Well, it's like when he tells her that he's been looking at her logs and everything, it's like she caught up with all everything he said or thought and everything. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I'll just give her cash. I was like, no.
And and the glowing rock that she has.
Oh yeah.
The first time I saw this episode, I think there was that glowing thing in her culture, and I think she said something like it can enhance love, and I was like, are they going to have like a sex scene with this thing? Oh no, good. They're going to keep their clothes on and just hold the rock, but that's weird too. I don't know, just like the whole thing, because like somebody's gotten murdered and she's under a cloud of suspicion, and he has time for like this relationship. It's weird. Weird. I don't know if there's more we need to say, because we've been talking about Geordi for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like those magical rocks that they had at Enterprise, where they
Right.
Like about? On the little holodeck.
Yeah. That's probably what it was. I don't know.
Rainbow rocks. Yeah.
Rainbow rocks.
I just remember they were kind of like sparkly colors. Maybe it's been a while since I've seen.
Were they? I thought they glowed.
It could be. I haven't seen the episode for a
They've
while.
used rocks
okay.
for a lot of things.
That's true. That's very true.
Remember with Troy and the one guy, and he transferred his negative feelings to her through the rock.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Man
yeah.
of the
It's a
people.
convenient prop.
You can find it anywhere.
Oh, there's a rock. We just found it outside the studio. Well, should we move on from Geordi? Have we said all we need to say about him?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on to Data. So let's talk about Data and Yar. So
Must
kind
we?
of see the. I have it on the list, so we're going to talk about it for a minute here.
Okay, if we
Okay, what do you think about Data and Yar,
Yeah, I don't like
Amy?
maybe it came too soon in the season, or it was season 1, episode 2, right? Make
It was,
now. And it was so contrived and forced, and I don't think, and we'll talk about it when he gets to In Theory, like that was very natural, and I could totally see everything about that. But Yar, and then to continue this travesty that is Data and Yar, they talk about it all the time. Measure of a Man. Oh, what does this mean to you? It's, Yar's little, and they just kept bringing it over and over again. That is something that I really don't
Interesting.
need to hear about ever again.
See, because the way that I feel about it is what happens in the Naked Now. I just don't like that episode overall because it's such a retread of the original series episode and all that stuff. So I don't necessarily like that, but I do actually like what it brings out in Data, because you see it in Skin of Evil at her funeral when, like, toward the end of it, Data is talking to Picard and says, this is supposed to be about Lieutenant Yar, but I'm thinking about myself and how much I miss her. And Picard's like, you've got the point of it. And then in Measure of a Man, that he's kept this hologram of her, and it's something that has some kind of personal meaning. It's like, I don't necessarily like the actual relationship or the interaction, but what it brings out in Data and how you see more of his facets of trying to explore a more human side, I think is what makes it interesting, or what I appreciate about it.
Yeah, I would
Anyway.
agree. I just don't like that it's with Yar, maybe. I don't know. There's something about it just doesn't sit well with me.
Okay. So we're just going to go over this one briefly. Is there anything else you have to say, Richard? No?
No, not really. I mean, it's
I know.
pretty awkward, but I mean,
It was the 5-minute relationship.
Yeah, quite literally. Yeah.
Yeah, and at the end of it, Yar's like, it never happened. Oh, really? I'll keep a hologram of you to prove it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's go on to another Data relationship. Data and the Borg Queen. Listeners suggested this, so we have to talk about it.
This one's worth talking about, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, so this is
I
from
agree.
First Contact, and they have kind of an interesting relationship during the movie where the Borg Queen's trying to tempt Data to give up some of the codes and secrets, and it seems like Data had a temptation, at least for, a fraction of a second.
0.68.
0.68 seconds, that's right. He's very precise about it. And he kisses her, so interesting. Amy, what do you think about Data and the Borg Queen?
I really like it. I find it interesting. I like the complexity of, is it really a relationship? Is the Borg Queen really interested in Data? Well, of course not, but then maybe she might be, and is Data...
She seems to enjoy it.
I know, right? So, and then is Data, because he does have his emotion chip, and she'd be sure to turn it on, and so, yeah, is Data, actually, developing feelings for it with the kiss? Is he going to destroy the Enterprise? Like, I think the buildup and just the dance between them two is so well done and just beautifully written, and the actors, the connection between the two actors, I think is just spot on. I think, they really do sell this as a possible relationship. And I just think it's fun to think about. So I like it.
Yeah, and actually, like, so the other day I just went and watched just the parts with Data and the Borg Queen, like ignoring the rest of the movie. I put some clips up on YouTube, and it is interesting to like see the progression and see how he kind of gets into it. He's playing a part at a certain point, but and how the Borg Queen, she does seem to be kind of into it. I mean, like in order to prove the thing with the skin and to like blow on it, she could just be like and just blow on it, but she like specifically like lowers herself down to the right height and is like, you know, like she's getting into
Yeah.
the kind of drama of it. So that was interesting. What do you think, Richard?
I don't want to be inappropriate.
All right, well,
No,
put it in the most appropriate way you can.
There you go. It's good. I actually like. I mean, I don't know if I would consider it a relationship. More like she's trying to seduce him and basically
Right.
get information out of him. Which
The romance lasts longer than with Yar.
Yes.
that's probably true. Yeah. That's about right. Yeah. But like, I mean, I like the whole interaction between the two. It's probably some of my favorite parts of First Contact, and it's just amazing on his acting ability. I just love it. His reactions. It's like,
Yeah, the way he gasps, he's like,
and it seems like it's over the top, but I guess in a sense, what did he say the last time he used any of his skills was like 16 years ago or something like that?
no, I
Is that
think
what he said?
it's eight
8
years.
years.
8
Well,
years,
he puts
that's
it,
right.
He puts it to the second.
Right, that's right. 8 years. That's right. I remember now. But okay, let's just generalize 8 years.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, to over dramatize that, it just looks like it's like the first time sort of thing, and it's just great. I absolutely love what he does in those scenes. So yeah, I like it. So
Yeah, and like, you know, of the 3 Data relationships we'll talk about, it's the only one with someone who is maybe a little closer to who Data is as kind of a more artificial organism.
Good
Right.
So
point.
we can
yeah.
kind of relate at that level, right?
Yeah.
but you would think that not only would she do physical, but she would do attack his mind as well. You know, like put a data port
Yeah.
right into the back of his skull.
Yeah, it was
No?
interesting how, you know, they were saying, Data was saying, oh, you can't assimilate me, but there must be some way they could hook him into the collective,
Right.
you know, so he could hear their thoughts or something. I don't know. Maybe you have to have like a little Borg Android adapter in order to do that.
A lightning port or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you can convert different inputs. Like you could have your VGA cable on your video monitor and plug it into USB, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but wouldn't things be like wireless in the future? No more of this plug this sort of thing.
You would think so. You would think so. Yeah.
They'll probably call it
The
like
wireless
something-
collective.
They'll call it like Borg tooth or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I think it is kind of an interesting relationship, and there's you see the different phases of it and what happens, and it's one of those unfortunate relationships that ends with, you know, you murdering the other person, but
Yes.
you know,
It's called justice.
it happens. Well, maybe
Well,
murder
it's the
was too
Borg
strong a
Queen,
word, but
you know. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the Borg Queen.
no, but it's like this relationship will end in one person's death. Whose will it be? Yeah, but no, I like it, and I think it's interesting.
Well, and it's funny because she, you know, I think, man, so really, do you think that she really did fall for Data?
Oh no, I don't think for a minute. It
Do
was
you
all
don't think
her
for a minute?
purposes.
So then what was the whole point of, okay, so you're going to join me, and then she, I mean, obviously Data's playing that, yes, I will be with you and I will be, you know, your second and your mate. And then she expects him. And so does she trust him now to, okay, enter and, you know, kill the Enterprise?
Yeah, it
No.
seems like she's, or you mean the Phoenix that they're
Yeah,
firing
the Phoenix.
at.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like she has that expectation because she's surprised when it misses.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
I don't think.
I don't
think
know.
she.
I mean, either she just love is blind, or she just made a very wrong strategic error in her calculations of trust.
Or Data is a really good actor as well.
It seems like he is because he because he fools her.
Yeah.
But I would think that they would be working along two paths. That they might have, it seems like we can't access this information from the codes because Data doesn't work the same way that we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd think at the same time the rest of the collective would be working on, let's see how we can get it out of his mind anyway. And they would have a backup plan. But it was all based on her seducing him and,
Yep.
and him
Yeah.
being interested in her.
Yeah.
So bad strategy.
Yep.
Oh well. I guess the Borg are better at building ships and firing weapons than that kind of strategy.
Hacking into someone else's mind.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, should we talk about the third Data relationship we have on our list, which is with Jenna Desora in Theory? This is the one where Data decides to try out a relationship with a crew member on the ship. We talked about this one a little bit before, but your thoughts, Amy?
I think I really do enjoy this episode. I think it's so fun. I think it actually tells a lot about Data and tells a lot about Jenna. And I love at the end, spoiler alerts, that she finally makes that connection of, I just fell for another guy who is emotionally unavailable. I love that connection that she makes, and she's able to do it with, in my opinion, a safe person like Data, that's, would never harm her, would never, do something intentionally to her, that she's able to see that and make that connection. So I think this is a great relationship episode overall, because we do get to learn so much, but I really like that clincher at the end that she makes about her realization about herself.
Well, I have a question for you, Amy, because I think I really like the episode as well, though I don't quite like the ending as much. But, I know that our fellow host, Brandon Shamatala, has some issues with this episode, and he thinks it does a real disservice to Data and that he's treated as kind of nothing more than a robot, and he's a lot more than that. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, he is an android, and I'm still... I know it goes back and forth, and I've listened to the whole mission log thing. Like, I am going to believe, because the writers have said and because it's been said, Data doesn't have feelings. So I'm going to go along with that. So I don't think he's treated unfairly at all. I think he's experimenting. He's doing this social experiment, and it doesn't work out. So he's going to delete the program.
Yeah, like actually, as someone pointed out from a previous episode, they don't actually specifically say that Data has no emotions until I think it's toward the middle of season 3 in Deja Q. So,
yeah.
But it feels like to me it's heavily implied before then, but they don't really say anything about it, and they kind of move more toward no emotions. But anyway, I thought I'd mention that just as a different point of view. But what I think is also interesting is, like, in this episode, it's not like this crew member Desora is someone who's new to Data and is just there all of a sudden. He's talking about that they've had this friendship that's gone on for a while, and Data is supportive of her and knows about past relationships, is going to, help her, to remind her of what wasn't good about past relationships. So I kind of like that there's some history there. And I think, as I said before, it would have been interesting if the relationship continued past this episode and we could see more of it. But Richard, what do you think of Data and Jenna Desora in Theory?
I like the relationship. It's just I don't like how it ended, especially when you have when he says, "Oh, I'm gonna delete this program because I have no use for it." So I'm like, with his passion to be more human, that would be something that you actually would keep and learn from and all that kind of stuff. But overall, I actually like the relationship on how it changed. Him trying to figure out what she likes, what kind of person that he should be, and it's like we said before, you got to be yourself in order to make her, in order to find someone, as well as make a relationship work as well, and I mean, I like him trying to figure it out and everything, and in a sense, he's trying to find himself and also trying to find out what kind of person he should be like. When reality is, he should be himself, as as a person. I mean, obviously, in a sense, I guess you want to say she fell for him. I guess is probably the closest word or phrase I could think of to why she would start dating him. But like at the same time, like we said, he's in a sense emotionally unavailable. So
Well, he seems kind and supportive, and that's what she likes.
Right.
And I think she's really jarred by him trying to take on this persona and like yelling at her and stuff. And she's like, "What are you doing?" Because she wants him to be that kind and supportive person all the time, but he can only work, it seems, based on what he's read about or heard. Which is interesting because, like, for us as humans, we often work on what we've read about or what we've heard or what we've seen before having a certain experience. So I don't know how Data would be all that different, but
I don't know.
It does have limitations.
It seems, when he goes in and, tries to start this argument, and she's like, what is going on? Like, I think she could feel that it was contrived. And I think you can see that and feel that when you're in a relationship with someone who, is playing games. I equate that the same way. And it's like, why are you playing games with me? Just be real, just be authentic, just be honest, And I think she sort of, is like, why are you playing this game, quote unquote, running this program, just be authentic. And I don't know. I sort of made that connection. She definitely was flattered that he did write a program, but it was that program that changed him,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you can't have it both ways, woman.
You mean you can't eat your cake and or every cake and eat it too?
I don't know, but it's you do get to see the entirety of a relationship, after at the very beginning at the, after the concert, and she's all self-deprecating and, I should have done better. And, they're sitting there with O'Brien and Keiko and I almost feel a little bad for Data because before he writes this program, like he will say stuff that makes her laugh. Oh, Data, and but it's like she's laughing at him because he doesn't know that he's saying is funny. And I'm like, that's a little mean. I don't know.
I didn't take it she was laughing at him. I think what she was laughing at was kind of, I don't know, his personality, that he could be funny and make jokes and not realize it. I don't know.
Yeah, so
Could be right.
he's saying something. She takes it as a joke. I mean, it is funny, but he's not knowing he's saying it. So you're not laughing with him. So
I
you're
can see
laughing at him. I don't know.
All right. Well, so shall we move on from Data?
We shall.
Okay. So far, all of the relationships we've talked about were doomed to some sort of failure. But let's talk about one that continues and is successful in its way. And that is Miles O'Brien and Keiko, who appear in some episodes of TNG, a number of episodes of DS9, but we'll just talk about the TNG stuff here. So what I think is interesting is that I think a lot of people get annoyed by Keiko, but I don't mind her, and I kind of like the O'Brien-Keiko relationship. But Amy, what are your thoughts on it in TNG?
Well, I guess, and I don't know if it's with the relationship specifically, but I find it so interesting that O'Brien and Keiko are so entrenched in their cultures that it sort of causes a rift sometimes between them. And I think, I don't know. I think that's the only part about it that I don't like. I love that, they come together and they have their little tiffs, and that they definitely have some love for each other, and they have this baby. And so we get to see them by themselves. We get to see them interacting as couples like we do, in theory. So I don't mind it. I don't think I would miss it if it were gone, but I don't know. What do you think, Richard?
I absolutely love their relationship, and I really wish they would have shown more in TNG than they did, like they did in DS9. Because it's like your classic, it's like your classic family. I mean, it's considered a family ship. Well, why not show families? And O'Brien and Keiko is that family that they could obviously depict on an actual starship. Show the stresses like they did in DS9 with Keiko. And then, and they could have done all of that. What are the stresses of actual interstellar travel? What are the stresses of having like Molly, or what was the other kid? Hoshi wasn't the other one? No, not Hoshi.
No, Yoshi.
Yoshi. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yoshi.
Well, who gets born in DS9? Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But I'm just saying, like, why not show the family dynamic on how it stresses how it can stress. I mean, obviously we don't know yet, but we can only assume. And I mean, I can only imagine what it would be like to be on a starship that long and then have your entire family like that. And it's sort of like, how would they react to like shore leave, or how would they react to when they go to a certain planet? I think this would have been a gold mine, at least one story here and there. I mean, it doesn't have to be every story, obviously, but like at least show some kind of like story of them being a family on board a starship. So.
Yeah, I mean, because everyone else is single. That would be a nice switch to see that. You're right, missed opportunity.
Yeah, and I was noticing, because I watched all the different parts where you see Miles and Keiko together. There's really not that much. I mean, it's
right.
Keiko appears in 8 episodes, but I think there's 1 or 2 where O'Brien isn't even in the episode. She's just doing something else. And in some of the episodes, like in Power Play, O'Brien gets taken over by this alien presence, and for a lot of the episode, he's just being like really harsh to her.
Right.
And then in Rascals, Keiko is like a 12-year-old, so you don't get to see like their regular relationship.
Right.
And then in Night Terrors, I think O'Brien's getting affected, and he's like insanely jealous, but it's because he's not getting the right kind of sleep. So like unfortunately for a lot of these, you don't get to see the regular interaction, but you do get to see it a little bit. Like, when Keiko wants Miles to eat her plankton loaf and sea berries, and he's like, I don't know about this. By the way, is that something they made up? I don't think plankton loaf is like a real thing, but
I hope not.
They're trying to make up some like futuristic health food, I guess. But so they were arguing over that, and then Miles is like, "Oh, you should have some of my Irish cuisine. You'll love it. Oh, it's so heavy." You get to see some of this interaction. It feels real, like people would talk about that. Like, I don't know about that food. So that's nice to see. And I think it's in theory when they're kind of teasing about Miles always leaving his socks around that she has to pick up. Like, they're very affectionate with each other during that scene and kind of teasing each other. So I get the feeling like they have their arguments and conflicts and things that have stresses and strains, but that would be like any marriage or any relationship, and it feels real, and they kind of work it out and move forward, and they are good in their relationship. I mean, the first time we see them is when they're getting married, right? So we see like their married life and having kids, but yeah, they should have done a lot more with that. And probably if O'Brien was a regular character, you would have seen a lot more of that, but because he wasn't, you didn't. But yeah, I like it, but I've seen people who don't like Keiko and think she's a little harsh to Miles, but I don't think so. Like, if you really like take a look at all the clips back to back, I think there is kind of like a loving interaction there most of the time, at least in TNG. So, yeah. And I think out of the relationships you see in TNG, it's only this one and Riker and Troy that end up being successful through like the whole run.
Yeah,
that's
it, true.
Pretty much. So at least there's those two. Well, anything else on this, or should we move on to the next one? Okay.
Good.
Let's talk about something we talked about a little bit before, but Amy gets excited about. That is Beverly Crusher and Odan. So I have to say, before you give your comments, Amy, I rewatched the episode. I did like it a lot more this time and got what you were talking about with their interaction. It did feel like natural, and it made more sense to me. So I'm glad I rewatched it.
Oh,
But
good. I'm
tell
glad
us
to
what.
hear.
Tell us how much you love this relationship.
I do. Well, and I feel like I'll be duplicating what I said last week, but I will gladly say it again. I just feel okay. So, yeah, we get to see the opening shot in a passionate kiss between, Beverly and Odan. I mean, just what an opener. But it just is so realistic and natural. And the characters, they have good chemistry on screen. I think also what plays into it that it doesn't feel like a relationship of the week because they have a history. It seems like, and I don't know if they said exactly how long Odan has been on the Enterprise, but
I think it's a couple weeks.
yeah, it's a significant amount of time for, compared to, a romance of the week type of thing. So they do a good job in bringing their history, albeit 2 weeks, but that there's been some time that they've had together, and now they're at this fun, exciting point of their relationship that is, it's still new, and ooh, are we telling people? Are we not telling people? I mean, I love it. And like I said, I hope everyone has experienced that part of the relationship that's just still so fun and new and you want to be around. And it just is very realistic of, when they're in his quarters and she's like, well, I have to go to work, and they're kiss, kiss. Oh, I have to really go now. Kiss, kiss. It's just,
Don't go.
I just think it's so realistic, and they did such a good job in really, making that relationship an important part in Crusher's life. I wish that they would have referenced that later on as well, but
Yeah. But they didn't.
They didn't.
Well, I mean, I can see that, like, and it does seem like a passionate and natural relationship. But of course, unlike any relationship any of us on this planet have experienced, there's this symbiont where the memories kind of continue to another host, to Riker, and then to the female host Kirill at the end. So that makes it different. but
Yeah.
it is interesting to see those permutations.
yeah. And how she
Yeah.
keeps up with it or lack thereof.
Or tries to and fails at the end, which I'm
Yeah.
going to talk about a little bit. But but Richard, what do you think about Crusher and Odan?
Everything that Amy just said.
Okay.
No, no, I like it. I like it a lot. I agree with her. It's very it's one of those relationships that you really want, and it's I sympathize with all of that. So yeah. Everything's Amy said it all.
Well, so here's the question that I have. So she has this great relationship with Odan, but the host body dies and has to be put into Riker while they're waiting for a new host to come. And she struggles with it, and she has all these issues with it. But then eventually, like, okay, we'll continue the relationship. I'll kiss you, and we'll continue on, and I'll help you out, whatever.
Yes.
So she seems okay with that,
Yes.
even though it's clearly going to be temporary. Then at the end, to Beverly's surprise, the next host is a female host. And at the end of it, like, she has this like explanation. Doesn't specifically say, oh, it's because your host is the same sex that I am, but she says something like, I can't keep up with these changes, it could be temporary. But when it was with the Riker as the host, she was willing to be okay with it being temporary. I always had the feeling that if it was a male host, that she would be more open to continuing that. I mean, and I always think about that when I think of this episode, and I wonder, Amy, what you think about that.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that she was willing to, bide her time with Riker because you are expecting that the next host body will be male. And I guess that's a normal assumption, not having any prior relationship or knowledge of Trill.
I don't know. Do you think the hosts that are ready might be, half and half? I don't know, but the way Trill Society works, is
but
weird,
in your mind, I'm sure, if I were Beverly, I mean, I haven't come across a Trill before, and so I don't know. We're just
Or maybe she thinks all the
creatures
hosts
of
are male or
habit.
something.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But it's definitely that twist at the end, because I think all the viewers were going to assume that it would be another male host,
And
as if
and
there's this identity that this Trill is gendered. And again, that is how we view the world, not necessarily everyone.
But I think the interesting thing, and they probably get into this more in DS9, is like the host has a specific gender, but the symbiont really doesn't, and has to go
Right.
through all of these changes. They're in a different hosts that have different genders over time. But I think it is interesting, and probably at the time they were pushing this as far as they could. Beverly says, "Oh, Dan, I do love you, and please remember that." And she's specifically, I think, saying that to the symbiont, not necessarily to the host. And then Kariel, who's the new host, like kisses her on the wrist, which is probably as far as they could go at that point. But
Yes.
I do think it's interesting, and they were taking some risks in even doing that. But probably if it were today, they might do things a little differently. Maybe, I don't know. But it always strikes me as interesting that they put that in there as the reason why it wasn't going to continue. So, any thoughts on that, Richard?
No. Mm-mm.
That covers it.
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much. Yeah, that pretty much.
But yeah,
covers
it is interesting in the space of like the 45 minutes, there are like 3 different hosts that she has to deal with in this. There's a lot going on there.
Well, and that's why what her statement is at the end, like, that's true. It's like, man, I can't keep up. And, if I think about it, like, if I'm in love with someone, do I want them to live forever? I don't know. That seems, I don't know. It's just, because we're so used to dying. We're going to live, give or take 75 years. That's the average expectancy. So, like with that, almost that relationship has closure. And so now with Beverly and O'Dan, like Beverly's going to eventually die, but that relationship doesn't have any closure. And so that sort of messes with the mind a little bit, I think.
It does. I mean, it's established in DS9 that these symbionts can live for hundreds of years across a number of different hosts in different lifetimes. But like also, it's kind of a weird thing because that symbiont has memories and experiences that get passed on, but it's mixed with the host. And anyway, we could have a whole discussion about it, but I think it's quite interesting to think about, and I definitely enjoyed the episode more this time. So it seems, Amy, when you recommend or you make a comment and I go back and rewatch something, I like it more.
Nice.
So victory. Yeah. All right. So we have one more. I know we've been going for about an hour here. We have one more that I want to make sure that we talk about. And we talked about a few Riker relationships in the previous episode, or maybe it was Riker and Troy. But let's talk about Riker and Soren. So this is from the episode The Outcast, with the Janai, which are the the genderless species. So, Amy, what do you think about them?
Well, let's just, even before I go, this thing, genderless species, obviously is not correct, because we come to find out that there is gender, but they try to neutralize it. So I just want to make that clear. I love the fact that Jonathan Frakes says that he wanted Soren's character to be played by a male actor. And had that been the case, like now when I watch The Outcast, like I just have to view it that way, because I think it would make and does make the episode that much stronger.
And it's not just Soren. I think all the Janai are played by women.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You're right. I really think that the relationship, again, between Riker and Soren, I think it develops naturally. I mean, of course, we only see it, in one episode, but it seems like there's days that they're together, and I'm almost I like the start of the relationship, but then near the end where Riker's willing to break and disobey orders to go and save her. And, I feel that that's a little over the top for me, but I like definitely the beginning of their relationship.
What do you think, Richard?
I like it. I think that didn't we want to skirt our way around this one for until the next
there
time?
was an episode that you guys did with Lee
Lee.
about
Right. Yeah. And it's fine. I mean, I have no problems with it. I actually thought it was a very genuine relationship to be on the show, and that would I don't know how I feel about it being a male. I mean,
well,
I would like to
the
see
reason
it.
that Jonathan Frakes had said that was because it was supposed to kind of be like an allegory or a subtle message
Right.
about about gay relationships and what it was that would be like. They were trying to say something, but they couldn't kind of go that far and say it. But
No. I know. I'm just saying, like, I don't know what it would look like. To be quite honest, I mean, it is. I mean, it definitely would have been groundbreaking. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
They would have definitely had to rewrite that episode, or at least not rewrite it, but like rewrite the character a little bit, because I don't know. I think more she felt more. Well, obviously she was. But it felt more female than anything else versus transgender. I don't know if there's a correct way to write a transgender or no gender person. I don't know if that's even possible. But yeah, it would definitely would have been interesting and definitely groundbreaking to have something like that. And I agree with Jonathan Frakes. It very well could have been very interesting to see it through the male the male characteristic of non-gender. So
Yeah.
well, here's the question that I always think about, because I mean, I think even if the character of Soren, reveals to Riker, like, I've felt more like I'm part of a female gender and want to express myself that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it does seem like Soren is different in some ways than than the other people that you might see with Riker. So I just think about that, like, what is most appealing to Riker about Soren? Is it like the way that Soren, like, expresses herself, or the way that they talk to each other, or like what do you guys think it is that, because I think not only supposedly the lack of gender, but I think in some other ways this character is different than some of the other ones that we see Riker have relationships with. So what do you think, Amy, it is that appeals to him?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because I wanted to ask sort of a follow-up question. Do you feel that because she views Riker like in 10 Forward, a little flirting and stuff like that. So do you think that just in viewing that she's already trying to change, and albeit not really knowing exactly what she's changing into, but change into something that Riker finds attractive, therefore that would be female? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, like she has this attraction to him and is trying to find out a way to express it so that he'll reciprocate or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah. Because, maybe if she had seen Riker interacting and flirting, with males, that he found attractive, like, would she have and felt more inclined to be male if that's what he preferred,
So I wonder if one of the things that's appealing to Riker is the way that Soren just kind of doesn't have any hesitation to say things that most people wouldn't say. It was like, "Commander, tell me about your sexual organs." And he's like, like, this is someone that can kind of put him off balance a little bit, and maybe that's something, like, I don't know, that he finds appealing.
Yeah, but
go ahead.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that Riker finds it appealing that she is, and oh my gosh, I said the word she, that Soren
Well,
is...
that's another thing. I think that it it can be appropriate to say that because that's how, for a lot of the episode,
She's identifying.
she identifies
Yeah.
herself. But anyway, but it is a
So-
question.
So, do you think that Riker is that it's reinforcing he is falling for Soren because she is transforming herself to be someone that he is attracted to? You know, it's sort
Maybe,
of like
yeah.
the perfect mate.
Hmm.
You
Yeah, I
know,
can
that
see that.
like I'm
Yeah.
going to transform myself into something that you will like, that you will want, because I'm attracted to you, and that's what I want to do. I don't know. These are really
It could
good
be.
episodes, good relationships.
Yeah, it brings up a lot of interesting questions. So should we maybe talk about our final thoughts about our discussion today?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
fine with me.
So, Richard, so what are your final thoughts about the relationships we've talked about today? Or even if you want to talk about, this combined with what we talked about before, and maybe there's some like interesting thread through all of that.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, overall, my final thoughts on this is that I'm glad we're going through through all these. It's definitely putting a different perspective on some of these relationships that you don't even think about. We think about Riker and Troy and Ro and Riker and
No, we don't ever think about that, Richard.
and you know what I mean.
And Worf and Troy.
Worf and Troy.
Yes,
and all
there we
that
go.
and
kind of stuff.
Kalar, Picard and Crusher. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
all the major relationships, but seeing these secondary relationships just makes me think about they're actually well written. I mean, for the most part. I mean, obviously endings on some of them aren't really that great, but at the same time it's we kind of put these to the back burner and not really talked about them like we could for this show. And actually I'm glad that we did this because these relationships are important just as much as the major ones, and they deserve to be discussed and analyzed and all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad we did this, and yeah, it just I didn't get my say in the whole Riker Soren thing, but that's okay. But like
Oh,
no, and then that's fine. No, I'm just saying, like, not that I'm against anything like that. I'm just saying, like, my whole thing was that I would have loved to have seen a guy, but if we're talking about like what Riker likes, it needs to be a guy that's bigger than him, like taller. just to see it.
so you
just
really
loved
know
it.
what Riker likes, huh?
He likes us. He likes a smaller woman. That's for sure. Yeah, he definitely.
But a
Yeah, I
taller
would
man.
say, but a taller man. That would be very interesting just to see. Because I mean, if he wants his character to be that kind of character that's all around and doesn't mind, I guess kissing a man or being romantic with
Yeah.
a man on the show, then it would have to be someone that's taller than him and probably more dominant than him. I'm assuming it can't be someone that's like submissive and everything.
We're getting to a whole different
But
discussion.
yeah, that's a whole
here.
nother discussion. But yeah, I'm just saying, like, if it had to be that way, it has to be that way. So, but
right.
like, yeah, I really enjoy thing about all these relationships. So I'm glad we did it.
Excellent. Amy, your final thoughts.
I too am really glad we've done this because, when you say Star Trek, the genre of Star Trek is that it's your sci-fi. It's action, it's space, but then analyzing, listening to all of these romantic relationships, like that is what's real. I mean, everyone's in relationships, everyone's not in relationships, and we get to see the whole gamut thanks to Geordi. But we do get to see these relationships and analyze it, and it tells us who we are as a human race and where we are and our thought processes and how we interact one with another. And as much as Star Trek is known for being socially aware, like talking about this is basically a drama show. I mean, you could consider this as much a drama show as you can sci-fi with the amount of relationships to conversations that we've had on this. So I'm really glad to have this chance to talk about and ask these questions about how are we in relationships and how the characters show that and how they grow because of it.
I totally
Excellent. Yeah, I think it is great that we did, and I'm glad that the listeners had some other suggestions and we could go over this topic as a part 2, because there are a lot of relationships to talk about. And one thing that does strike me is the kind of breadth of it, because you have Geordi with a hologram, and then you have, Data with the leader of a cyborg collective, and then you have Crusher with somebody who has a symbiont that can change host bodies, and then you have Riker with someone with a species that says that there's no gender, and like it's I mean, pretty much the only ones in here where it maybe is more typical are the ones with maybe Yar and Desora Keiko. Maybe Aquiel, that one's really weird too.
No, that
but like there's but like there's all of this breadth of relationships. So yeah, I mean it is talking about romantic relationships and drama, but in a very sci-fi way in a lot of these things, and I like that because it causes us to think about our own relationships and what's important for us and how much we should be ourselves and things like that. And I think what also runs through all of this is that, like, if you think about the relationships on TNG, it's pretty much just Riker and Troy, like by the time of Nemesis, and O'Brien and Keiko during TNG that is actually like successful and long lasting. Everything else is doomed for one reason or another. Mm-hmm. And it made me think of the To the Journey episodes they've done recently on doomed relationships, where it's pretty much they're all doomed except B'Elanna and Tom. So it's like there's something about being on a ship that leads to all of these like relationships that don't work out, because on DS9 there's a lot of relationships that actually do work out. So anyway, but it makes you think about the show in a different way. So I like it when we do a topic like this. So I'm glad we came back and did this.
Yes.
As do I.
Yeah. All right, so a preview of next week's episode. So next week, inspired by a couple of Standard Orbit episodes about some unfilmed scripts for the original series, and also a suggestion by listener Tim Hands to do this for Earl Grey, we are going to start, I hope, a series, hope you guys like doing it next week, of lost episodes for the next generation. So I've been doing some research. There's some really interesting things scripts that were developed that were never filmed, so we can talk about some of those what-ifs and whether we like those episodes or there's a reason that it didn't make it to the screen. So hopefully you guys are looking forward to that.
Yes, and thankfully we're on the same network as Standard Orbit, so there's not copyright infringements, because we sure do keep stealing a lot of their ideas that they do. So thank you, Standard Orbit.
No.
You.
It's because I've been batting down his lawsuits and everything. We're fine. We're fine.
Okay, good.
Oh, thank you. I didn't even have to think about it. So anyway, we'll look forward to that and hope that you'll join us for that. Well, it's been so much fun talking about more strange and interesting romantic relationships on The Next Generation, but that isn't the only thing we've been talking about here on the network. Here's what you might have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm. The Edge, a Star Trek Discovery podcast.
Also, and this might be me reading way too much into this, but I feel like because Tilly ends up being so instrumental in what happens later in the mirror universe, part of me when I was reading this wondered if in the back of my mind Stamets is like, I need to have one person, and Lorca's like, oh, I want to make my own oh, Tilly, that's who you want. Yeah, okay, sure.
To the journey!
This is Jeff Foxworthy, You Might Be a Redneck If.
Oh, Lord.
If you fall in love with a hologram...
You might be in a doomed relationship.
If you fall in love and it never really happened...
You might be in a doomed relationship.
If you fall in love with someone manipulative...
You might be in a doomed relationship.
If you can't even remember your own name...
You're definitely in a doomed relationship.
The Orb.
So I'm going to destroy your computers, so if you want to fight, you're going to have to use real bombs. I hope you're ready, because I'm leaving. You figure it out. But of course, trailing the Enterprise is always the Starfleet cleanup ship that comes in and cleans up the mess.
Yeah, the USS Broomsweep.
Right,
yeah.
USS Broomsweep.
Standard Orbit.
Can we not just go to just a planet and everybody has dark complexion and it's not a thing? It's not like a crux of the story, right? I think that would have been true progress. And when it's not even like, oh, well, since we're going to this planet, we have to talk about race. That's the whole point of the whole story. It serves the story well, but I don't think that's a prerequisite to have a story like this.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out all these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an Apple user, be sure to hit the subscribe button in the Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they are published. And please, leave us a star rating and written review.
If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab the RSS link.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best place to join in the larger conversation is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, B-A-B-E-L, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right up.
If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select Earl Grey. That will come right to us. You can also find the network on Trek FM and on Facebook at facebook.com/trekfm.
So, Richard, where can people find you when you're not trying to resist the Borg Queen?
I don't know if I would resist. No, I was kidding.
So resistance is futile, huh?
Ah, yes. Well, they could find me on Facebook at the Babel Conference. I pop in here and there, and also I am on Twitter. My handle is xransom. Amy, where can people find you when you're not rooting for Crusher and Odan?
Well, you can find me here on the network. I co-host The Edge with Brandon Shea Mutella. I am on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place is on the Babel Conference. Well, Justin, where can people find you when you're not being sad for Geordi's failed relationships?
A Geordi sigh here. Well, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at TrekFan4747, where I tweet about nothing but Star Trek. Currently tweeting out my Season 5 rewatch of The Next Generation, and you can also find me hanging around the Babel Conference on Facebook. If you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/trekfm. That's patreon.com/trekfm to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more, available through our special patrons website, The Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month. We really appreciate any support you can give us and hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/trekfm.
We'd like to take this opportunity and recognize our current associate producers, Norman Lau, Justin Ozer, Michael Huter, and Thomas Appel. Thank you for supporting Trek FM and Earl Grey.
So join us next time for another cup of Earl Grey.
Today is a good day to die.
That was very romantic, Worf.
You want me to growl it for you?
Great joy and gratitude.
Geordi, no, don't do it. No.
Oh, you guys are too funny.